When waitress Ramona Fletcher is assigned to serve Michael Jordan at Delaney's restaurant, she has no idea her life is about to change forever. As a struggling single mom working double shifts to pay for her son's asthma medicine, Ramona needs every tip she can get. But nothing prepares her for what happens when Jordan leaves and she finally sees the bill. The tip he leaves makes her break down in tears. But why would the basketball legend be so incredibly generous to a waitress he just met? And what hidden connection could possibly exist between Michael Jordan and Ramona's late husband that might explain his life-changing gesture? Ramona Fletcher rushed through the back entrance of Delaney's, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. She was on time, but only barely. The city bus had been late again, and her feet already ached from the 6-block sprint from the stop to the restaurant. Sorry, she muttered, even though no one had complained yet. Ramona hung her jacket on the staff hook and quickly tied her curly hair back with a black elastic band. The locker room was empty except for Jamil, who was just finishing his lunch shift. He gave her a tired smile. "You're good. Vincent's not even on the floor yet." Ramona let out a breath. "Thanks. How was lunch?" "Slow." Jamil shrugged. Tips were garbage. That wasn't what she wanted to hear. Ramona needed good tips today. Really good ones. This morning, she'd given Zach his last dose of asthma medicine. The new prescription was waiting at the pharmacy, but so was the $85 copay she didn't have. She pulled her black apron from her bag and tied it around her waist. The fabric was faded from hundreds of washes, but still looked professional enough. As she checked her pockets for pens and her order pad, her fingers brushed against the small basketball keychain, Terrell's Lucky Charm. He'd carried it to every basketball game he'd played or watched. Now it was hers. "Fletcher!" Vincent's voice boomed from the hallway. "You ready?" Ramona smoothed her shirt and stepped out. "Yes, sir. Ready to go." Vincent Delaney was the owner's nephew and managed the restaurant with military precision. His pressed shirt and perfect tie made Ramona feel even more rumpled than usual. "Good. I need you in private dining tonight." Ramona blinked. "Private dining? That's usually Phoebe's section." Phoebe called in sick. Some stomach bug. Vincent checked his clipboard. "You've been here 3 years now. You can handle it, right?" Private dining meant bigger tabs and better tips. It was the section everyone wanted but few got. Mainly, it went to servers with seniority, or those in Vincent's good graces, neither of which described Ramona. "Absolutely," she said, trying not to sound too eager. "Thank you for the opportunity." Vincent nodded. "Don't make me regret it. We have some important guests tonight. I need your A-game." "You'll get it," Ramona promised. As Vincent walked away, Ramona felt a flutter of hope. This was exactly what she needed. A chance to earn enough for Zach's medicine and maybe even get ahead on the electric bill. She headed to the private dining room to prepare it for the evening. The space was elegant, with dark wood paneling and soft lighting from crystal chandeliers. 8 leather chairs surrounded a large table that gleamed from a fresh polish. Ramona checked everything twice: water glasses, wine glasses, silverware, napkins. Each place setting had to be perfect. Each knife and fork exactly 1 thumb width from the edge of the table. Her mind drifted to her boys as she worked. Marcus would be home from basketball practice by now, probably helping Zach with his homework. At 14, Marcus had stepped up after Terrell's death in ways no child should have to. He made sure his 8-year-old brother took his medicine, helped with his reading, and never complained when Ramona worked double shifts. The thought of Zach made her check her watch. She needed to text Mrs. Winters from next door to make sure. She'd look in on the boys around dinner time. "Bread baskets need to be fresh, not more than 10 minutes old when served," Vincent said, suddenly appearing in the doorway. "And make sure the butter is soft, but not melting." "Got it," Ramona nodded, making mental notes. "And Fletcher?" Vincent lowered his voice. "The guests tonight, they're big, like really big, so no mistakes." "Who is it?" Ramona asked, curiosity getting the better of her. Vincent shook his head. "Can't say, but if you do well, I'll remember it. If you don't..." He let the threat hang unfinished. After he left, Ramona took a deep breath. Big guests meant big pressure, but also big tips. She thought of the prescription waiting at Walgreens, of Zach's scared face during his last asthma attack, of how Marcus had held his brother's hand while they waited for the rescue inhaler to work. She ran her fingers over each fork, each knife, each spoon, making sure everything was spotless. She adjusted the flour arrangement in the center of the table, moving it a quarter-inch to the left. Through the kitchen doors, she could hear the staff whispering excitedly. Someone important was coming, and she was going to be their server. The thought terrified and thrilled her. Ramona touched the small basketball keychain in her pocket. "Wish me luck, Terrell," she whispered. "I think I'm going to need it tonight." Chaituti checked her reflection in one of the silver serving trays. Dark circles shadowed her eyes from too many late nights and early mornings, but her uniform was clean, her hair neat. It would have to do. The dining room was ready. The kitchen was prepping. And somewhere out in the city, someone important was headed to Delaney's, unaware that their dinner bill might be the miracle Ramona Fletcher had been praying for. The eye-tight kitchen doors swung open as Chef Paolo barked orders to his staff. Ramona watched the controlled chaos from the edge of the private dining room. Cooks moved with practiced precision, plating appetizers for the main dining area, while preparing special ingredients that weren't on the regular menu. They requested the prime dry-aged ribeyes, Chef Paolo told Vincent, and someone find me fresh. Truffles! Ramona's curiosity grew. She straightened a water glass that was already perfectly aligned with the others. "Fletcher!" Vincent appeared at her side. "The reservation is for 7 o'clock. That's 30 minutes from now. I need you to stay in this room and be ready. Do not leave for any reason." "Who exactly am I serving?" Ramona asked again, hoping for a hint. Vincent checked his phone, then leaned closer. "Let's just say if this goes well, it could put Delaney's on the map." He straightened his tie nervously. "And possibly save my job." Before Ramona could ask more questions, the front door chimes rang and Vincent rushed toward the entrance. Through the partially open door, Ramona glimpsed 2 men in dark suits scanning the restaurant. They didn't look like diners. They looked like security. Her heart beat faster. Celebrities sometimes ate at Delaney's, but rarely with this much preparation and secrecy. Last month, a food critic from the Tribune had come in, causing a similar stir, but not private security. Ramona quickly sent a text to Marcus. "Working special section tonight. Might be late. Make sure Zach takes his medicine before bed. Love. You both." The reply came seconds later. "Got it, Mom. Good luck." Ramona took a deep breath and smiled. That boy was her rock, too grown up for 14, but she was grateful every day for his help. A commotion near the front made her look up. The security men had returned and were speaking urgently with Vincent. One pointed toward the back exit, while the other checked the windows. Whatever was happening, it was big. Moments later, Vincent hurried into the private dining room, his face flushed with excitement or panic. Ramona couldn't tell which. "They're 5 minutes out," he hissed. "Their advance team just cleared the restaurant." "Vincent, please," Ramona said. "I need to know who I'm serving." Vincent glanced over his shoulder, then whispered, "Michael Jordan." Ramona's knees went weak. "Michael Jordan? The basketball player?" "No, the other Michael Jordan," Vincent snapped. "Of course the basketball player. Him and 3 business associates. They're discussing some investment thing." He grabbed Ramona's shoulders. "Do not mess this up, Fletcher. Do not ask for autographs. Do not mention basketball. Unless he brings it up. Treat him exactly like any other guest. Just the best version of that." Ramona nodded, her mind racing. Michael Jordan, Terrell's hero, the man whose poster had hung in their bedroom until the day they'd had to sell their house. The player who'd inspired Terrell through college basketball and whose example he'd used to teach their boys about perseverance. And she would be serving him dinner. "I need a minute," she said weakly. "You don't have a minute," Vincent replied. "They're here." As if on cue, the restaurant fell silent. Ramona heard the front door open, followed by hushed whispers and a few gasps from the main dining room. Heavy footsteps approached the private dining area. Ramona touched the basketball keychain in her pocket, feeling her late husband's presence. Stronger than she had in months. "Help me through this, Terrell," she whispered. Vincent greeted someone in the hallway, his voice higher than usual. "Mr. Jordan, welcome to Delaney's. We're honored to have you with us tonight. Please, right this way." Ramona smoothed her apron and stood tall beside the table, hands clasped. In front, just as she'd been trained. She forced her face into a professional smile. Pleasant, but not too familiar. The door swung open, and Vincent entered first, holding it wide. "Your server this evening will be Ramona. She's one of our finest, and she'll take excellent care of you." And there he was. Michael Jordan ducked slightly to enter the room, though the doorway was already tall. In person, he seemed even larger than on TV, not just in height, but in presence. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, a crisp white shirt, and a tie that probably cost more than Ramona's monthly rent. Behind him came 3 men in business attire, each carrying leather portfolios. "Good evening," Jordan said, his voice deep and confident as he nodded to Ramona. "Good evening, sir," she replied, amazed that her voice didn't shake. "Welcome to Delaney's. May I offer you and your guests something to drink while you settle in?" As Jordan and his associates took their seats, Ramona felt a strange sense of calm replace her nervousness. This was just a dinner service. She knew how to do this. She'd been serving meals for years. The only difference was who sat at the table. But as she took their drink orders, Jordan requested sparkling water with lime. A small voice in her head kept repeating, "This isn't just any dinner. This could change everything." She just didn't know yet how right that voice would be. As Ramona headed to the bar to place the drink orders, memories of Terrell flooded her mind. She could almost hear his voice, excited and full of life, talking about Jordan's famous flu game or the shot over Craig Elo that broke Cleveland's heart. Sparkling water with lime, 2 bourbons neat, and 1 gin and tonic, she told the bartender, Darius. Darius raised his eyebrows. "So? Is it really him?" Ramona nodded, but kept her voice low. "Yes, and he's exactly as tall as you'd think." "Man, I wish I could see him," Darius said as he prepared the drinks. "My dad had his poster on our wall my whole childhood." "Mine too," Ramona said. Then, more to herself than to Darius, "My husband used to say, Jordan wasn't just the greatest basketball player, but the greatest example of what happens when talent meets hard work." The memory was so clear. Terrell sitting on the edge of Marcus's bed, their son only 9 at the time, disappointed after not making the school basketball team. "You know," Terrell had said, "Michael Jordan got cut from his high school team his sophomore year." "For real?" Marcus had asked, eyes wide with disbelief. "For real," Terrell had confirmed, but instead of quitting, he used that pain to fuel his practice. He worked harder than anyone else, and look what happened. Ramona placed the drinks carefully on her tray. That conversation had happened in their old house, the one with the backyard where Terrell had installed a basketball hoop, the one they'd had to sell after his accident. The accident. Even now, 3 years later, the memory made her stomach clench. A rainy night. A truck driver who fell asleep at the wheel. And just like that, Terrell was gone, leaving her with 2 boys, a mountain of medical bills, and a grief so deep she sometimes couldn't breathe. "You okay?" Darius asked, noticing her expression. Ramona blinked back to the present. "Fine, just remembering something." She carefully balanced the tray and returned to the private dining room. Jordan and his associates were reviewing documents spread across the far end of the table. They paused their conversation as she entered. "Sparkling water with lime," she said, placing the glass in front of Jordan with a steady hand. "Thank you," he said, looking up briefly. As Ramona distributed the remaining drinks, she noticed the men were discussing investment opportunities in Charlotte. Jordan occasionally asked sharp questions, demonstrating a business intelligence that Terrell had always admired. "He's as strategic in business as he was on the court," he'd often said. When she finished serving the drinks, Jordan looked up. "We'll need a few more minutes before ordering food." "Of course, sir. I'll be nearby when you're ready." As Ramona stepped back into the hallway, she pulled out her phone to check on the boys. Another text from Marcus. "Zach's breathing sounds funny. Using the inhaler, but not much left." Her heart raced. This was exactly what she'd feared. The ID, prescription waiting at the pharmacy, might as well have been on the moon if she couldn't pay for it tonight. "Everything all right?" Vincent asked, noticing her worried expression. "Yes," Ramona lied, tucking her phone away. "Just checking on my kids." Vincent frowned. "Focus, Fletcher. This is too important for distractions." "My son's asthma is not a distraction," she wanted to say, but instead just nodded. She needed this job too badly to argue. She returned to the private dining room when Jordan signaled they were ready to order. As she took notes, she was struck by how respectfully he treated her, making eye contact, speaking clearly, saying, "Please," and "Thank you." Some wealthy customers acted like servers were invisible, but Jordan didn't. While inputting their orders into the kitchen system, Ramona found herself thinking about the last time she and Terrell had splurged on a nice dinner out. It was for their 10th anniversary, just 6 months before the accident. They'd saved for months, and Terrell had been so proud to order a bottle of champagne. "To 10 years with my best friend," he'd toasted, "and to decades more." Decades more. How quickly plans could crumble. When the appetizers were ready, Ramona carried them to the private dining room with practiced grace. 3 tuna tartars and 1 crab cake for Jordan. "The crab cake is excellent here," she said as she placed it before him. Jordan nodded appreciatively. The chef's recommendation. As she arranged the plates, the small basketball keychain slipped from her apron pocket, landing with a soft clink on the hardwood floor. Embarrassed, Ramona quickly retrieved it, hoping no one had noticed. But Jordan had. "Basketball fan?" he asked, gesturing to the keychain. Ramona felt her cheeks warm. It was my husband's. He was the fan. She hadn't meant to emphasize "was," but Jordan caught it. Something in his expression shifted. A flash of understanding. "Was?" he asked gently. "He passed away 3 years ago," Ramona said, surprised at herself for sharing something so personal. "Car accident." Jordan nodded solemnly. "I'm sorry to hear that." One of his associates cleared his throat, clearly wanting to return to business. Jordan held up a hand, asking for another moment. "He admired you," Ramona added, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "Used to tell our boys your story whenever they faced setbacks, about getting cut from the team and using it as motivation." Jordan smiled slightly. "That's a story that's followed me a long time. It helped my oldest when he didn't make his school team. Now he's starting point guard." She smiled, thinking of Marcus's last game, how he'd looked up to find her in the stands, just as he used to do with Terrell. "Good for him," Jordan said. "Perseverance matters." "That's what Terrell always said." She caught herself. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't be talking about personal things. Can I get you anything else with your appetizers?" "We're good for now, thank you," Jordan said, his eyes lingering on her for a moment before returning to his associates. As Ramona left the room, she felt lighter somehow, sharing that small piece of Terrell with someone who had meant so much to him. It felt right, like Terrell was present in some small way at this surreal dinner service. And perhaps, she thought, that was a sign of good things to come. Ramona checked her phone again while waiting for the main courses to be plated. Another text from Marcus had arrived. "Used last puff of inhaler. Zach seems okay now, but still wheezing a little." She typed quickly, "Keep him calm. I'll bring medicine tonight, promise." It wasn't just a promise to Marcus, it was a vow to herself. Tonight's tips had to be enough for that prescription. There was no plan B. Chef Paolo called her name, and she hurried to the kitchen pass. The entrees for Jordan's table looked spectacular. The prime ribeyes perfectly cooked, the sides artfully arranged, everything gleaming under the kitchen lights. "Don't let these get cold," Paolo warned. His usual gruffness softened slightly. Even he seemed affected by their famous guest. Ramona carefully balanced the large tray on her shoulder and made her way back to the private dining room. She could hear the men laughing inside, a good sign. Happy guests tipped better. She knocked lightly before entering. "Gentlemen, your main courses." The conversation paused as she served each plate with practiced efficiency. Ribeye for Jordan, and 2 associates, sea bass for the third. She refilled water glasses and ensured everything was perfectly placed. "This looks excellent," Jordan said, surveying his steak. "Chef's pride and joy," Ramona replied. "Is there anything else I can bring you?" "We're all set," Jordan said. Then, as she turned to leave, he asked, "Your son, the point guard, how old is he?" Ramona was surprised he remembered their brief exchange. 14. His name is Marcus. Jordan nodded. Good age to develop fundamentals. Is he tall for his age? Getting there. Takes after his father. Ramona felt a small tug at her heart. Terrell was 6'2". And your other son? You mentioned 2. Zach. He's 8. She hesitated, then added, he has asthma, so sports are harder for him. But he loves to watch his brother play. One of the associates cleared his throat meaningfully, and Ramona recognized her cue. Please, enjoy your meal. I'll check back shortly. As she left the room, she overheard one associate say, about the downtown development. The conversation had returned to business, yet something had shifted. Jordan had asked about her family, shown genuine interest. In her years of serving wealthy customers, that kind of personal connection was rare. When she returned to check on their progress, the men were deep in discussion. Jordan noticed her enter and gave a quick nod. Everything was satisfactory. She refreshed drinks silently and slipped out again, respecting their privacy. In the kitchen, Vincent pulled her aside. How's it going? They happy? Very, Ramona assured him. They're enjoying the food and having a good business discussion. Vincent's shoulders relaxed slightly. Good. Jordan's group is considering investing in something local. Could mean repeat business. He lowered his voice. I've already had 3 calls from other tables asking if that's really him. What did you tell them? That we respect all our guests' privacy. Vincent straightened his tie. But between us, the owner's ecstatic. Says if this goes well, I can have that assistant manager position I've been after. Ramona nodded, understanding perfectly. Tonight wasn't just important for her, it was crucial for Vincent too. Perhaps that explained his extra nervousness. Dessert menus, Chef Paolo called out, sliding them across the counter to Ramona. And tell them I recommend the chocolate soufflé. Takes 15 minutes, but worth the wait. When Ramona returned to the private dining room with dessert menus, the mood had lightened. Whatever business they'd been discussing seemed to have reached a satisfactory conclusion. Jordan leaned back in his chair, looking relaxed. Would you care to see our dessert menu? She asked, offering the leather-bound folders. Absolutely, Jordan said. What do you recommend? The chocolate soufflé is exceptional, though it requires a 15-minute preparation time. The New York cheesecake is also very popular. Jordan glanced at his associates. Soufflé sounds good to me. The others agreed, and Ramona collected the menus. 4 chocolate soufflés. Excellent choice. Coffee with dessert? They ordered various coffees, espresso for Jordan, and Ramona relayed the orders to the kitchen. While waiting for the desserts to bake, she checked in with Marcus again. Zach's watching TV now, breathing better. Relief washed over her, but she knew it was temporary. Without his medication, another attack could come any time. She needed to finish this shift, collect her tips, and get to the pharmacy before it closed at midnight. When the soufflés were ready, Ramona delivered them with a flourish. Best enjoyed immediately, she advised, as the perfect domes of chocolate released their steam. Jordan took a bite and nodded appreciatively. Compliments to the chef. The men enjoyed their desserts, the conversation now casual and punctuated with laughter. Ramona maintained her professional demeanor, but inside, her mind raced with calculations. The bill would be substantial. Even a standard 20% tip would cover Zach's prescription with money left over. As they finished their coffees, Jordan checked his watch. We should get going. Early flight tomorrow. Ramona nodded and prepared the bill. The total came to just over $2,100. The wine they'd ordered with dinner had been from the reserve list. She placed the leather folder discreetly on the table. It's been a pleasure serving you this evening, she said sincerely. I hope you enjoyed everything. Dinner was excellent, Jordan replied. "Thank you for your attentive service." There was a warmth in his voice that hadn't been there at the beginning of the meal. Ramona wondered if sharing that small piece about Terrell had created some kind of connection, or if Jordan was simply being polite to a server who had done her job well. She left them to settle the bill, busying herself clearing a nearby table while trying not to appear anxious. After a few minutes, she saw Jordan and his group stand to leave. She approached the table as they exited, Jordan nodding to her once more before disappearing down the hallway, with Vincent escorting them out. The leather folder lay on the table, closed. Within it lay Zach's medicine, Marcus's basketball shoes, maybe even a month's rent. At least that's what Ramona hoped as she reached for it, with steady hands but a racing heart. Ramona opened the leather folder and checked the bill. Everything looked correct. $147, 86 total. Her eyes moved to the tip line, where Jordan had written $500, a generous amount, over 20%. Relief flooded through her. This would cover Zach's medicine and leave extra for groceries this week. She slipped the signed receipt into her apron pocket and began clearing the table. As she stacked the soufflé dishes, she noticed something on Jordan's napkin. Writing. He had scribbled a note. "Excellent service. Please see host before leaving tonight." Ramona's pulse quickened. What could that mean? Had she done something wrong? She tucked the napkin into her pocket alongside the receipt and finished cleaning the private dining room, her mind racing with possibilities. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. News had spread throughout the restaurant that Michael Jordan had been their special guest, and other servers peppered her with questions. Was he nice? What did he order? Did he talk about basketball? Ramona answered vaguely, maintaining professional discretion while hiding her own emotional connection to the evening. She didn't share how Jordan had asked about her sons, or how she'd mentioned Terrell's admiration. Those moments felt too personal to gossip about. When her shift finally ended at 11, Ramona approached Vincent at the host stand. "I was told to see you before leaving?" Vincent nodded, looking unusually solemn. "Jordan left something for you." He handed her a sealed envelope with Ramona written on it in bold handwriting. "What is it?" she asked, turning the envelope over. "I don't know. He just asked me to make sure you got it." Vincent hesitated, then added, "Whatever it is, you earned it." Jordan's people called after they left, said it was the best service they'd had in months. Ramona's fingers trembled slightly as she held the envelope. "Thank you." "No, thank you," Vincent said. "The owner's thrilled. We're already getting reservation requests from people who heard Jordan was here." He smiled, a rare sight. "And that assistant manager position we discussed? It's yours if you want it. Better pay, regular hours. You could be home with your boys more." Ramona stared at him, stunned. "Are you serious?" "Completely. You start next week, if you accept." "I accept," she said immediately. Regular hours meant no more missed school plays or basketball games. Better pay meant fewer sleepless nights, worrying about bills. Vincent nodded. "Good. Now go home to your kids. And Fletcher, good job tonight." Outside, the night air was cool against Ramona's face. She walked to the bus stop, clutching the envelope and feeling strangely lightheaded. So much had changed in one evening. The generous tip, the assistant manager position. It felt like the universe was finally cutting her a break. At the bus stop. Alone under the streetlight, she carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a card with an embossed basketball logo at the top, written below in the same bold handwriting. "Ramona, Your story touched me. I'd like to help your sons. Please call my assistant at this EFEATS number to discuss a basketball camp opportunity for Marcus this summer. All expenses paid. For Zach, I know some great doctors who specialize in childhood asthma. They've helped my own family members. The same number can arrange that connection. Best wishes, Michael Jordan. Below was a phone number with a direct extension. Ramona's legs felt weak. She sat heavily on the bus stop bench, reading the note again. Then, a third time. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. But the card in her hands was real. The number was real. And the hope surging through her chest was definitely real. The basketball keychain seemed to grow warmer in her pocket. She pulled it out, running her thumb over its worn surface. "Terrell," she whispered, "you won't believe what happened tonight." Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "You okay? It's late." She texted back. "On my way home. Got great news. And Zach's medicine." The bus appeared around the corner, its headlights cutting through the night. Ramona tucked the card carefully into her wallet and gathered her things. Tomorrow she would call the number. Tomorrow she would begin to believe that this miracle was real. But tonight, she just needed to get home to her boys and hold them close. Tonight, she needed to tell them that things were finally looking up. As she boarded the bus, Ramona thought about how a chance encounter had changed everything. One shift, one famous guest, one connection made through memories of Terrell. She found a seat and leaned her head against the window, watching the city lights blur as the bus pulled away. For the first time in 3 years, the weight on her shoulders felt lighter. For the first time since Terrell's death, she felt like maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay. The bus turned onto her street, and Ramona spotted her apartment building. A light was still on in their window, Marcus waiting up for her. She could picture him at the kitchen table, probably helping Zach with his homework, just as Terrell would have done. She reached for the stop request cord, her fingers brushing against the basketball keychain once more. "Thank you," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was thanking Jordan, Terrell's memory, or some greater force that had finally decided to give her family a break. Perhaps it didn't matter. What mattered was that tonight, when she walked through that apartment door, she wouldn't just be bringing home Zach's medicine. She would be bringing home hope. The apartment building's elevator was broken again, so Ramona climbed 4 flights of stairs, her legs aching after hours of serving. The hallway smelled of someone's burnt microwave popcorn, and the flickering overhead light needed a new bulb. But none of that dampened her spirits tonight. She unlocked the door to apartment 4C and stepped inside. Their home was small, just 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a living area barely big enough for their worn couch and TV stand. But it was clean and filled with photos of happier times. "Mom!" Zach called, running to her from the couch where he'd been watching TV. His thin arms wrapped around her waist, and she could hear the slight wheeze in his breathing. "Hey, buddy," she said, hugging him close. "How are you feeling?" "Better," he said, though she could tell he was putting on a brave face. "Did you bring my medicine?" "I sure did." She pulled out her wallet and removed a $20 bill. "Marcus, can you run down to the pharmacy before they close? It's all paid for. Just give them our name." Marcus appeared from the kitchen, a dish towel over his shoulder. At 14, he already looked so much like Terrell that sometimes it made her heart ache. "On it," he said, taking the money. "I made mac and cheese if you're hungry." and Zach did all his homework. As Marcus headed out, Ramona sank onto the couch beside Zach. "You did your homework? Even math?" Zach nodded proudly. "Marcus helped me with fractions, and I read the whole chapter. For science. That's my smart boy." She kissed the top of his head, noticing how warm he felt, another sign his asthma was acting up. While they waited for Marcus to return, Ramona changed out of her work clothes into sweatpants and a t-shirt that had once been Terrell's. In the bathroom mirror, she saw the dark circles under her eyes, the worry lines that hadn't been there 3 years ago. But tonight, there was something else on her face too, a glimmer of hope. Back in the living room, she dished up some mac and cheese and sat beside Zach, who was watching a basketball game. "Who's playing?" she asked, though basketball had never been her thing. "Hornets versus Lakers," Zach said. "Marcus says the Hornets are Jordan's team." "That's right," Ramona said, smiling at the coincidence. "And guess who came to the restaurant tonight?" Zach's eyes widened. "Michael Jordan? For real?" She nodded. "For real. And I was his server." "No way." Zach bounced on the couch, then started coughing from the exertion. Ramona rubbed his back until the coughing subsided. "Easy, buddy. Yes way." And he was very nice. "Did you get his autograph?" Zach asked when he could speak again. "No, but—" She hesitated, not wanting to share everything just yet. "He left a very good tip, and he might help Marcus go to basketball camp this summer." Zach's face fell slightly. "Just Marcus?" Ramona hugged him close. "He might help you too in a different way. But let's talk about it when Marcus gets back, okay?" The door opened as if on cue, and Marcus rushed in with a small paper bag from the pharmacy. "Got it," he said, handing over Zach's inhaler and medicine. "They said to start it tonight." Ramona measured out the correct dose and helped Zach take it, relief washing over her as she watched him breathe easier almost immediately. "Now," she said when they were all settled, "I have some news." She told them about serving Michael Jordan, keeping her tone casual even though her heart raced with excitement. She explained about the promotion to assistant manager, the regular hours, the better pay. "Does that mean you won't miss my games anymore?" Marcus asked, trying to sound cool but unable to hide his hope. "That's right," Ramona said, "and I can be home when you boys get back from school." "Like before Dad died?" Zach asked softly. The question caught her off guard. "Well, not exactly. Like that, but better than now." She hesitated, then showed them Jordan's note. Marcus read it aloud, his voice growing more excited with each word. "A basketball camp? With Michael Jordan?" His eyes were wide. "Mom, those camps cost thousands of dollars." "And doctors for Zach," Ramona added, smiling at her younger son. "Special doctors who know all about asthma." Zach chewed his lip thoughtfully. "But how? Will we pay for that?" The question hurt, though Ramona understood why he asked it. At 8 years old, Zach had already learned hard lessons about money, about choosing between medicine and new shoes, about birthday presents that never quite matched what his friends received. "We don't have to pay," she explained gently. "Mr. Jordan wants to help us." "Why?" Marcus asked, suddenly suspicious. "People don't just give stuff away for free." He sounded so much like Terrell in that moment. Practical, slightly wary. Terrell had been the same way, always looking for the catch, the hidden cost. "Sometimes they do," Ramona said, though she understood his skepticism. "Sometimes people who have a lot want to help people who need it." Is it because of Dad? Marcus asked quietly. You said Dad was a big Jordan fan. Ramona nodded, touching the basketball keychain that now sat on their coffee table. I told Mr. Jordan a little about your father, about how he used to tell you Jordan stories when you needed encouragement. Like when I didn't make the team, Marcus remembered. Exactly. Ramona squeezed his hand. And I think that meant something to Mr. Jordan. They sat in silence for a moment, the TV still playing the basketball game in the background. Their small apartment had never felt quite right without Terrell, like a puzzle missing its centerpiece. But tonight, somehow, his absence felt less jagged, less raw. Do you think Dad would be happy about this? Zach asked. I know he would, Ramona said, her throat tightening. He always wanted the best for you boys. Marcus stood suddenly and walked to the window. Below, the street was quiet. Just a few cars passing by. Their neighborhood wasn't the worst in the city, but it wasn't the best either. It certainly wasn't the neighborhood where they'd lived when Terrell was alive. Mom, he said without turning around. Do you think we'll ever move back to a house with a yard and a basketball hoop like before? The question broke Ramona's heart a little. They'd had to sell their house shortly after Terrell's death, when the medical bills and funeral costs had overwhelmed them. The boys had never complained about the apartment, but she knew they missed their old home. I don't know, she answered honestly. But with this promotion, and if we're careful with money, maybe someday. Marcus nodded, still looking out the window. I'd like that. I miss our old backyard. Me too, Zach said sleepily, the medicine making him drowsy. And my rocket ship wallpaper. Ramona pulled him closer. I know, buddy. I miss it all too. What she didn't say was how much she missed waking up next to Terrell, hearing his laugh echo through their home, watching him teach the boys to dribble in the driveway. Some absences couldn't be filled, not even with good fortune. But as she sat there with her boys, the weight of the day's events finally sinking in, Ramona felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Possibility. The path ahead still wouldn't be easy, but for the first time since Terrell's death, it didn't feel impossible either. Time for bed, Zach, she said, noticing his eyes drooping. School tomorrow. But I'm not tired, he protested, even as he yawned widely. Sure you're not, she smiled. Come on, I'll tuck you in. As she helped Zach brush his teeth and get into pajamas, Ramona's mind whirled with plans. Tomorrow, she would call the number Jordan had given her. Tomorrow, she would start to believe that their luck had finally changed. But tonight, as she tucked the blanket around her youngest son and kissed his forehead, she simply allowed herself to feel grateful. Grateful for a generous tip, a promotion, and the kindness of a stranger who had somehow seen their struggle and decided to help. Mom, Zach murmured as she turned off his light. Yes, honey? I think Dad sent Michael Jordan to your restaurant. Ramona smiled in the darkness. You know what? I think maybe he did. Ramona's phone rang at 6:30 a.m., jolting her awake. Groggily, she fumbled for it on the nightstand. Hello? She mumbled, still half asleep. Ramona, it's Vincent. Sorry to call so early. She sat up, instantly alert. Is everything okay? More than okay, Vincent said, sounding unusually excited. Michael Jordan's group has booked the private room, again for tonight, and they're asking for you specifically. Ramona's heart skipped. For me? Are you sure? Positive. His assistant called personally. Vincent paused. Can you come in? I know it's your day off, but I'll be there, Ramona interrupted. This was a second chance, another opportunity she couldn't pass up. After hanging up, she checked the time. The boys would need to be up for school soon. As she put on her robe and headed to the kitchen to start breakfast, her mind raced. Another night. Serving Jordan meant another good tip, maybe even another chance to talk about the basketball camp and doctors for Zach. The smell of pancakes soon brought both boys to the kitchen, sleep still in their eyes. "Mom," Marcus yawned. "Why are you making pancakes? It's Thursday." Ramona flipped a perfectly golden pancake onto a plate. "I got called into work tonight. Special request." "Michael Jordan again?" Zach asked excitedly, sliding into his chair. "Yes, actually." She smiled at their wide-eyed reactions. His group asked, "For me specifically?" Marcus grinned. "See? I told you you're the best server there." "Thanks, honey." She ruffled his hair, thinking how much he looked like Terrell when he smiled. "But here's the thing. It means I'll miss your school play tonight, Zach." Zach's face fell. He had been practicing his 3 lines as tree number 2 for weeks. "You promised you'd come," he said quietly. Guilt twisted in Ramona's stomach. "I know, buddy. I'm so sorry. But Mrs. Winters said she'd record it for me, and we can watch it together tomorrow night, with popcorn and everything." Zach nodded, but his disappointment was clear. "It's okay. We need the money, right?" The simple acceptance in his voice made Ramona's heart ache. At 8 years old, Zach already understood too much about financial necessity. "It's not just about the money," she said, sitting beside him. "Remember Mr. Jordan's note? This is another chance to talk to him about that basketball camp for Marcus and those special doctors for you." Zach brightened slightly. "The doctors who could make my breathing better?" "That's right." She hugged him close. "Sometimes we have to miss one good thing for an even better thing later." After the boys left for school, Ramona called the number Jordan had provided in his note. AI polite woman answered, introducing herself as Jordan's personal assistant. "Mr. Jordan mentioned you might call," she said. "He's asked me to set up appointments with Dr. Brenner at the Children's Respiratory Clinic for your son, Zach." Ramona's breath caught. "He already did that?" "Yes. And regarding your older son, Marcus, the Summer Basketball Academy has a spot reserved for him. All expenses paid. I can email you the details if you provide your address." It felt surreal, like a dream she might wake from at any moment. "Thank you. That's incredibly generous." "Mr. Jordan was impressed by your family's story." The assistant said simply, "He'll be dining at Delaney's again tonight. He mentioned he's looking forward to updating you personally." After the call, Ramona sat at her small kitchen table, overwhelmed. Things like this didn't happen to people like her, yet somehow it was happening. Her phone buzzed with a text from Vincent. "Jordan's group at 7 p.m. Menu requests coming. Soon." Second text followed. "Also, owner wants to discuss your promotion details before service." Everything was moving so quickly. Yesterday, she'd been worried about affording Zach's medicine. Today, he had appointments with specialist doctors. Marcus had a spot at an exclusive basketball camp, and she was getting promoted. All because she'd been assigned to the private dining room when Phoebe called in sick. The thought of Zach's play nagged at her as she prepared for work. She'd promised him she'd be there. Even with Mrs. Winters recording it, it wouldn't be the same. She wouldn't see his face when he spotted her in the audience. Wouldn't be able to give him flowers afterward, as she'd planned. But this opportunity was too important to pass up. One missed play could mean a better future for both boys. With a sigh, she called Mrs. Winters to confirm she could record the performance, then texted Marcus to make sure he'd take Zach to the school auditorium on time. "Got it covered," Marcus replied. "Good luck tonight. Maybe get Jordan's autograph this time?" Ramona smiled. Despite everything they'd been through, Marcus still had that spark of childlike enthusiasm, just like his father. She arrived at Delaney's early as requested. The owner, Mr. Delaney himself, a man she'd only met twice in 3 years, was waiting in the office. "Ramona," he greeted her warmly, "Vincent tells me you did an excellent job last night." "Thank you, sir." "Michael Jordan doesn't request specific servers unless they're exceptional," he smiled. "I'd like to formally offer you the assistant manager position. Better pay, regular day shifts, benefits, including health insurance for your family." Health insurance? The words hit Ramona like a physical force. No more worrying about affording Zach's medications or choosing between rent and doctor visits. "I accept," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion welling inside her. "Thank you for this opportunity." As she prepared the private dining room for Jordan's return, Ramona checked her watch. Zach's play would start in 2 hours. She wouldn't be there to see it. The guilt remained, but now it was tinged with purpose. She was building something better for them step by step. Chef Paolo appeared at her side. "Special menu tonight," he said, handing her a sheet of paper. Jordan's assistant sent it over. "Make sure everything's perfect." As Ramona reviewed the menu, even more extravagant than the previous night, her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "At school now. Zach's nervous but ready. Wish you were here." She texted back. "Tell him I love him and can't wait to watch the video. You're the best big brother." Vincent approached, straightening his tie nervously. "They'll be here in 30 minutes. Everything set?" Ramona nodded, pushing aside her mixed emotions. Tonight was about providing perfect service again. Tonight was about securing this second chance that had fallen unexpectedly into her lap. Because sometimes, she thought, touching the basketball keychain in her pocket, second chances were the most important ones of all. Michael Jordan arrived, precisely at 7, accompanied by the same 3 associates from the previous night. Ramona greeted them with warm professionalism, noting that Jordan seemed more relaxed today, his smile easier. "Good evening, Mr. Jordan," she said. "Welcome back to Delaney's." "Thank you, Ramona," he replied, using her name with a familiarity that surprised her. "I hope we didn't disrupt your schedule by requesting you specifically." Something in his tone made her wonder if he somehow knew about Zach's play. She pushed the thought aside. That was impossible. "Not at all," she assured him. "It's my pleasure." As she took their drink orders, sparkling water with lime again for Jordan, she noticed one of the associates studying her curiously. He was older than the others, with silver hair and kind eyes behind stylish glasses. "Did you call the number?" Jordan asked as she served their drinks. "Yes, sir, this morning." Ramona kept her voice steady, but emotion threatened to break through. "I don't know how to thank you for the doctor appointments for Zach and the basketball camp for Marcus." Jordan nodded. "No thanks necessary. My assistant said everything's arranged." The silver-haired man leaned forward. "Michael tells us your younger son has asthma. My grandson had similar issues until he found the right treatment plan. Dr. Brenner is the best. He was my grandson's specialist." Ramona felt a rush of gratitude toward this stranger who understood. That's wonderful to hear. Zach's had such a hard time, especially this past year. "If I may ask," Jordan said, "where is Zach tonight?" The question caught her off guard. "He's at school, actually, in the spring play." She checked her watch. It would be starting in 15 minutes. "He's playing a tree." "A tree?" Jordan smiled. "And you're missing it to serve us?" The silver-haired man exchanged a glance with Jordan. Something unspoken passed between them that Ramona couldn't interpret. "I asked a neighbor to record it," she explained, feeling a need to justify her choice. "We're going to watch it together tomorrow night." Jordan nodded thoughtfully. "Well, we appreciate your being here. I hope he understands." "He does," Ramona said, though the doubt in her heart persisted. Children understand more than we give them credit for sometimes. As she turned to place their dinner orders, Jordan asked, "The basketball keychain, you mentioned it was your husband's?" "Yes," Ramona replied, surprised he remembered that detail. "Terrell carried it to every game, said it was good luck." "Where did he play?" Jordan asked. "College ball at North Carolina Central." She smiled at the memory. "Nothing professional, but basketball was his life. He coached youth leagues after college. Before the accident," Jordan finished for her. Ramona nodded, emotion tightening her throat. She didn't usually discuss Terrell with customers, but something about Jordan's interest felt genuine, not merely polite. "What position?" Jordan asked. "Point guard, like Marcus is now. Always said the point guard is the team's heart, making plays happen for others." The silver-haired man nodded. "That's where leadership starts, on the court and off." "Terrell believed that," Ramona said. "He tried to teach the boys that same philosophy, that success comes from helping others succeed." She realized she'd been talking too much and straightened professionally. "I should place your orders. The chef has prepared something special tonight." As she walked to the kitchen, Ramona felt oddly light, as if sharing those small pieces of Terrell had somehow made him present again. Throughout the meal service, Jordan and his associates discussed business matters, occasionally including Ramona in their conversation. They asked about her promotion to assistant manager, seeming genuinely pleased for her. When one associate stepped away to take a phone call, Jordan turned to Ramona. "How long have you been working double shifts?" The directness of the question surprised her. "Since Terrell died. 3 years now. That's a long time to carry everything alone," he said. "I'm not alone," Ramona replied. "I have the boys. We take care of each other." Jordan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Still, it can't be easy. The medical bills, raising 2 boys, by yourself." "It's not," she admitted. "But we're making it work." She hesitated, then added, "Tonight, actually, marks a turning point. With this promotion, I'll have regular hours, benefits. I'll be able to be home when they get back from school." "Like when their father was alive?" Jordan asked. "Similar," she said, wondering how he knew to ask that specific question. "Not exactly the same, of course. Nothing can replace Terrell." "No," Jordan agreed, "but you're doing right by them. He'd be proud." The certainty in his voice, as if he knew what Terrell would think, struck Ramona as odd yet comforting. As she cleared their plates, she found herself saying, "We had to sell our house after he died. The medical bills, funeral costs. It was too much. The boys still miss having a yard, a basketball hoop." She hadn't meant to share that detail, yet somehow it felt important, acknowledging the full weight of what they'd lost. "Where was the house?" the silver-haired man asked gently. "Oakwood Heights," she replied. "Nothing fancy, but it was ours." Terrell had just finished renovating the kitchen before the accident. Jordan and the silver-haired man exchanged another look. "I shouldn't be talking about this," Ramona said, embarrassed by her oversharing. "Would you care for dessert?" Jordan smiled. "Absolutely. Recommend something." As Ramona described the dessert options, she felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. Probably Marcus letting her know how Zach's performance went. A fresh wave of guilt washed over her, but she pushed it aside. While the men enjoyed their desserts, creme brulee for Jordan, Ramona noticed the silver-haired man writing something in a small notebook. He tore out the page and handed it to Jordan, who nodded and tucked it into his jacket pocket. When it came time to present the bill, Ramona placed the leather folder discreetly on the table. "Thank you again for everything," she said quietly. "The doctor appointments, the basketball camp. It means more than you know." Jordan looked up at her, his expression unreadable. "Sometimes people come into our lives. Unexpectedly, Ramona. Sometimes connections are deeper than they first appear." The cryptic statement puzzled her, but before she could respond, Vincent appeared at the doorway, signaling that Jordan's car had arrived. "It's been a pleasure," Jordan said, standing to leave. "I think you'll find everything in order." He nodded toward the leather folder containing the bill. As the group exited, the silver-haired man paused beside Ramona. "Your husband sounds like he was a remarkable man. The kind who leaves a lasting impression on everyone he meets." Something about the way he said it, with such specific certainty, made Ramona stare after him as he followed the others out. She turned back to the table, her heart suddenly racing without knowing why. The leather folder lay there, containing another tip, perhaps another note. But somehow, she sensed there was something more this time, something she couldn't yet understand. Ramona stood alone in the private dining room, staring at the leather folder on the table. She took a deep breath and opened it. Inside was the credit card receipt for $395.17. Her eyes moved automatically to the tip line, expecting perhaps another generous $500. What she saw made her blink hard, certain she was misreading. The tip line showed $50,000. Ramona gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. This had to be a mistake. No one left a $50,000 tip, not even Michael Jordan. She checked the total again. $52,355.17. The numbers were clearly written, Jordan's signature bold and unmistakable. Below. Her legs suddenly weak, Ramona sank into one of the chairs. This couldn't be real. Someone was playing a cruel joke. But who would do that? And why? With trembling fingers, she turned the receipt over. On the back, in the same bold handwriting she'd seen on the note last night, Jordan had written, "For Zach's treatment, Marcus's future, and the home Terrell would want you to have. Your family's perseverance inspires me. MJ." Tears sprang to Ramona's eyes, blurring her vision. This was more money than she made in 2 years. Enough for Zach's medical care, for Marcus's college fund, maybe even enough for a down payment on a house. But why? Why would Michael Jordan do this for a waitress he'd met just yesterday? Vincent's voice broke through her daze. "Ramona, they've gone. How did it—" He stopped, noticing her expression. "What's wrong?" Wordlessly, she held out the receipt. Vincent's eyes widened. "This can't be right," he said, staring at the numbers. 50,000? That's impossible." "That's what I thought." Ramona pointed to the note on the back. "But he wrote this too." Vincent read it and let out a low whistle. "I need to call the bank. Make sure the card will authorize for this amount." He pulled out his phone. "Stay here." Left alone again, Ramona tried to make sense of what was happening. The generosity was overwhelming, but the mystery behind it bothered her. Jordan's words from earlier echoed in her mind. Sometimes connections are deeper than they first appear. What connection could possibly exist between Michael Jordan and her family? Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Zach was amazing!" Everyone clapped so loud. Mrs. Winters got it all on video. "When will you be home?" Reality came rushing back. Her son had just performed in his play, and she'd missed it. Even with this incredible tip, that moment was gone forever. "I'll be home soon," she texted back. "So proud of both of you." Vincent returned, his face a mixture of shock and excitement. "It's legitimate. The charge was approved. $50,000, Ramona. Do you know what this means?" She nodded, still unable to fully process it. "It means my boys will be okay." "It's more than that," Vincent said. "Jordan's assistant just called. He left his private number for you, said to call him tomorrow to discuss setting up proper accounts. For your sons." "Proper accounts?" "College funds, medical trust, professional financial planning." Vincent shook his head in disbelief. "This isn't just a tip, Ramona. This is life-changing." Ramona stared at the receipt in her hands. Life-changing. Yes, that described it perfectly. But the question remained. Why? Her family? Why now? "Go home," Vincent said gently. "Be with your boys. We can handle closing up." In a daze, Ramona collected her things. The restaurant staff watched her curiously, aware. Something extraordinary had happened, but not knowing what. She kept the details to herself, tucking the receipts safely into her wallet. Outside, the night air was cool against her tear-stained face. She hadn't even realized she was crying. The bus stop was empty. The last bus already gone. Without thinking, she hailed a passing taxi, something she'd never normally do with her tight budget. "West Side Apartments on Maple," she told the driver. As he shut it, the taxi pulled away from Delaney's. Ramona leaned her head against the window, watching. The city lights blur. She felt lighter than she had in years, as if a weight she'd grown accustomed to carrying had suddenly been lifted. The taxi driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Good night?" he asked conversationally. Ramona smiled through her tears. "Life-changing," she echoed Vincent's words. When the taxi pulled up to her apartment building, Ramona overpaid the driver, feeling a strange new freedom in the gesture. "Keep the change," she said, stepping out. The elevator was still broken, so she climbed the 4 flights of stairs, her mind racing with possibilities. They could move out of this apartment. Zach could get the best medical care. Marcus could go to college without crushing student loans. All because Michael Jordan had somehow seen her, really seen her, and decided to help. She paused outside, their apartment door, hearing the muffled sound of the TV inside. Taking a deep breath, she entered. Marcus and Zach sat on the couch in their pajamas, watching basketball highlights. They looked up as she walked in, their faces brightening. "Mom!" Zach jumped up, racing toward her. "Did you hear? I remembered all my lines." Ramona hugged him tightly, breathing in the scent of his shampoo. "I can't wait to watch the video. I bet you were the best tree ever." "He was," Marcus confirmed, joining the hug. "Even Mrs. Peterson said so, and she never likes anything." Ramona laughed, a free and joyous sound she hadn't heard from herself in years. "I have something to tell you both." They sat together on the worn couch, Ramona in the middle with an arm around each boy. Carefully, she showed them the receipt. "Is that?" Marcus squinted at the numbers. $50,000. "Mom, that can't be right." "It is," she said, softly. "Mr. Jordan left this for us. For Zach's treatments, for your education, maybe even for a new home someday." Zach's eyes were huge. "Like our old house? With a yard?" "Maybe," Ramona said, not wanting to make promises she couldn't keep. "But definitely, somewhere better than here." "But why would he do that?" Marcus asked, practical as always. "He doesn't even know us." Ramona touched the basketball keychain, now sitting on their coffee table. "I'm not sure. But he left this note." She showed them the back of the receipt. "The home Terrell would want you to have," Marcus read aloud. "How would he know what Dad would want?" It was the same question that had been nagging at Ramona. How would Michael Jordan know anything about what Terrell would want for his family? "I don't know," she admitted, "but I'm going to find out." Long after the boys had gone to bed, Ramona sat at their small kitchen table staring at the receipt. The numbers hadn't changed. $50,000. A life-altering sum that had appeared like magic when they needed it most. Sleep felt impossible. Her mind kept returning to Jordan's cryptic words and the strange way the silver-haired man had spoken about Terrell. As if they knew him. But how could that be? Terrell had never mentioned knowing Michael Jordan. That would have been something to tell. A story he would have shared proudly with the boys. Unless... Ramona pulled out her phone and opened the search engine. She typed, "Michael Jordan, North Carolina Central Basketball Connection." Nothing relevant appeared. Of course, Jordan had played for UNC Chapel Hill, not NC Central, where Terrell had played. There would be no basketball connection there. She tried again. Michael Jordan, Terrell Fletcher. This search returned only unrelated results. Whatever connected them, if anything, wasn't publicly known. With a sigh, Ramona put her phone away. Perhaps she was inventing mysteries where none existed. Maybe Jordan was simply a generous man who had been touched by her story of struggling to raise her boys alone. But that didn't explain how he'd known Terrell's wishes for their home. Morning came too quickly. Ramona had barely slept, but adrenaline kept her alert as she prepared breakfast for the boys. "Mom, are we really rich now?" Zach asked, pouring too much syrup on his pancakes. "No, honey, we're not rich," Ramona corrected, gently. "Mr. Jordan was very generous, but we still need to be careful with money." "But we can get a house?" he persisted. "Maybe. We'll see." She didn't want to make promises until she understood exactly what was happening. After sending the boys to school, Ramona called the number Jordan's assistant had provided. The same polite woman answered. "Mr. Jordan was hoping you'd call this morning," she said. "He's arranged for you to meet with financial advisor Thomas Wilson at First Capital Bank today at noon. Would that work for you?" Ramona checked the time. She had a few hours. "Yes, that's fine." "Excellent. Mr. Wilson will help establish college, funds for your sons, and a medical trust for Zach's ongoing care." The assistant paused. "Mr. Jordan also mentioned you should bring any documents related to your former home in Oakwood Heights." Ramona's pulse quickened. "Why would I need those?" "I believe Mr. Wilson will explain everything. The address is 425 Central Avenue, downtown. Ask for Mr. Wilson at reception." The call ended. leaving Ramona with more questions than answers. She went to the small filing cabinet where she kept important papers. Inside a worn folder labeled House, she found the documents from their old home, the deed, mortgage papers, and the painful foreclosure notice that had come after Terrell's death when she could no longer make the payments. At precisely noon, Ramona entered the imposing glass building that housed First Capital Bank. The marble floors and high ceilings made her feel small and out of place in her simple blouse and slacks. "I have an appointment with Thomas Wilson," she told the receptionist, trying to sound confident. "Of course. Mr. Wilson is expecting you." The woman's smile was warm. "Please, take the elevator to the 14th floor, suite 1420. Mr. Wilson turned out to be the silver-haired man who had dined with Jordan the previous night. He greeted Ramona with a gentle handshake, ushering her into a spacious office with views of the city skyline. "I imagine you have questions," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "Many," Ramona admitted, starting with why Michael Jordan would leave a $50,000 tip for a waitress he just met. Wilson smiled. "That's a fair question, but perhaps not the right one." He opened a file on his desk. The right question might be, why did Michael specifically seek out the family of Terrell Fletcher? Ramona's breath caught. "What do you mean, seek out? Our meeting at Delaney's wasn't coincidental, Ms. Fletcher. Michael has been trying to locate Terrell's family for some time." "But why?" Ramona's voice trembled. "Terrell never mentioned knowing Michael Jordan." "No, he wouldn't have." Wilson pushed his glasses up his nose. "Terrell was a man of remarkable integrity and remarkable discretion." He removed a photograph from the file and slid it across the desk. It showed a much younger Michael Jordan with his arm around a tall, smiling young man that Ramona recognized instantly. "Terrell," she whispered, touching the photo. "But when was this taken? How?" 25 years ago, Wilson said, before Michael became a global icon, before either of them had the lives they would eventually lead. "I don't understand," Ramona said, still staring at the photo. "Terrell would have told me if he knew Michael Jordan. Not if he'd promised not to." Wilson leaned forward. "Ms. Fletcher, what I'm about to tell you has been kept private for decades at Michael's request, but he feels you deserve to know the truth." Ramona listened, stunned, as Wilson related a story she had never heard, about a young Michael Jordan, and an incident that could have ended his career before it began. About how Terrell had been there that night, about a promise made between two young men. "So you see," Wilson concluded, "Michael's been looking for Terrell for years to repay a debt he felt he owed. When he finally found you and learned of Terrell's passing," Wilson's voice softened. "Well, he decided the debt was now owed to Terrell's family." Ramona couldn't speak. Her hands trembled as she placed the photograph back on the desk. "The tip," she finally managed, "and the college funds, this is all because of something that happened 25 years ago?" "A life debt is never fully repaid, Ms. Fletcher. Michael believes that without Terrell's intervention, that night there might never have been 6 NBA championships, never been Air Jordan." Wilson smiled gently. "Now, shall we discuss the practical matters? The funds for your son's education and Zach's medical care have already been arranged." As Wilson outlined the details, trust funds, investment accounts, health insurance, Ramona struggled to process what she'd just learned. Terrell had kept this secret their entire marriage, had carried it silently to his grave. "There's one more thing," Wilson said, pulling out another document. Regarding your former home in Oakwood Heights, did you bring the papers I mentioned? Ramona nodded numbly, reaching for her bag. What Wilson said next would change everything. Mr. Jordan has purchased your former home in Oakwood Heights, Wilson said simply. Ramona stared at him, certain she had misheard. He, what? Purchased your home, Wilson repeated. After it was foreclosed, it changed hands several times. The current owners were planning major renovations, but agreed to sell when Michael made an offer significantly above market value. Ramona's mind reeled. Their house, the one where she and Terrell had started their family, where Marcus had taken his first steps, where Zach had come home from the hospital. Jordan had bought it? But why? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. To return it to its rightful owners. Wilson slid a document across the desk. This is the deed, already transferred to your name. The house has been fully paid for. There is no mortgage. Ramona's hands shook as she took the paper. There it was, her name on the deed to their old house on Maple Street. The house she had been forced to sell after Terrell's death, when the medical bills and funeral expenses had overwhelmed her. This can't be real, she said, tears welling in her eyes. It's very real, Wilson assured her. And there's more. The house has been renovated. Updated kitchen, new roof, fresh paint, and the backyard. He smiled. Well, let's just say your boys will have a proper place to play basketball. A sob escaped Ramona's throat. For 3 years, she had worked double shifts, pinched pennies, and still barely kept her head above water. And now, in the span of 2 days, everything had changed. Her sons would have their home back, the home Terrell had loved. I don't know what to say, she managed. Michael didn't do this for thanks, Wilson said gently. He did it because he believes it's what Terrell would have wanted. And because he never got the chance to thank Terrell properly while he was alive. Ramona wiped her eyes. Can you tell me what happened between them? Wilson nodded. Michael said you should know. It was 1982, just after Michael's freshman year at UNC. He was in Durham for a summer league game, went to a bar afterward with some teammates. A group of local guys recognized him, got hostile. Racial slurs led to pushing, then punches. Ramona closed her eyes, picturing it. Terrell was there, Wilson continued. He didn't know Michael, but he intervened. Got Michael out before police arrived. Had Michael been involved in a bar fight, especially with the racial elements involved, his career might have ended before it truly began. That sounds like Terrell, Ramona said softly, always standing up for others. According to Michael, Terrell refused any reward or recognition, asked only that, Michael, remember, there are good people in the world, even in bad moments. Wilson adjusted his glasses. They stayed in touch for a while, but as Michael's fame grew, Terrell backed away, said he didn't want anything from their connection. The story settled over Ramona like a warm blanket. It fit perfectly with the man she had loved. Humble, principled, unwilling to cash in on a good deed. When Michael tried to find him years later, Terrell had moved, changed numbers. It was only recently that Michael was able to trace him, only to discover he had passed away. Wilson's voice softened. When he learned about your situation, he felt it was finally time to honor the debt. Ramona held the deed tightly, as if it might disappear. This is too much. Not according to Michael, Wilson smiled. He said to tell you that Terrell saved more than his career that night. He saved his faith in humanity at a time when he needed it most. They spent the next hour going over practical details. The house was ready for immediate occupancy. Trust. Funds had been established for Marcus and Zach. A separate account would cover Zach's medical expenses until he turned 25. By the time Ramona left the bank, she felt like she was floating. The world looked different, brighter, full of possibility. She walked to a nearby park and sat on a bench, trying to process everything. Terrell had known Michael Jordan, had helped him in a moment of need, had never used that connection for personal gain, never even mentioned it to his family. She pulled out her phone and called Vincent at the restaurant. "I can't come in tonight," she said when he answered. "Or tomorrow. I need a few days." "Take all the time you need," Vincent replied. "The assistant manager position will be waiting when you're ready." Next, she texted Marcus, "Come straight home after school with Zach. I have news." How would she tell them? How could she explain that their father's silent act of integrity had led to this miraculous turn in their fortunes? As she rode the bus home, Ramona thought about promises, the ones we make to others, and the ones we make to ourselves. Terrell had promised Michael discretion all those years ago and had kept that promise. Now, Michael was keeping his own promise to honor the debt. Long after it could be directly repaid. She touched the basketball keychain in her pocket, feeling closer to Terrell than she had in years. "You would have been embarrassed by all this," she whispered, "but you would have been so happy to see the boys back in our home." The bus turned onto her street, and Ramona stood to exit. She had preparations to make before the boys got home. Tonight, she would tell them about their father's hidden act of kindness, about the house that would be theirs again, about the security that had appeared like a miracle, but was really the result of Terrell's character. Tonight, they would watch Zach's play on video, celebrate his performance, and begin planning their move back home. Tonight, they would begin their new life, a life made possible by a promise kept for 25 years. And Ramona made her own promise silently as she walked the final blocks to their apartment. To honor Terrell's memory by raising their ode for sons with the same integrity he had shown. To teach them that character matters more than recognition. That doing the right thing, even when no one is watching, even when there's no reward, is what defines a person. That was Terrell's legacy, more valuable than any house or trust fund, and she would make sure their sons understood it. 3 months later, Ramona stood on the front lawn of their house in Oakwood Heights, watching Marcus and Zach shoot hoops on the brand-new basketball court in the backyard. The spring sun warmed her face as she sipped her morning coffee, still marveling at how much had changed. The house looked better than she remembered. Fresh paint, new windows, updated landscaping. Jordan's team had thought of everything. Inside, the kitchen Terrell had renovated remained mostly unchanged but with new appliances. The boys' bedrooms had been repainted in their favorite colors, and Zach's rocket ship wallpaper had been meticulously recreated. It was both familiar and new, like their lives now. "Mom!" Zach called, waving excitedly. "Watch this!" She smiled as her younger son attempted a layup. His breathing was stronger these days. The specialists Jordan had connected them with had prescribed a new treatment plan that was working wonders. Zach still had asthma, but it no longer defined his life. Marcus rebounded the ball effortlessly, At 14, he was already showing the promise of his father's athletic ability. The summer basketball camp had transformed his skills, and his coaches were talking about college scholarships down the road. Ramona checked her watch. She had an hour before she needed to leave for work. Her assistant manager position at Delaney's kept her busy, but the regular hours meant she was home every evening for dinner with the boys. The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. Probably Mrs. Carson from next door, who had been bringing welcome-back cookies and casseroles since they moved in. But when Ramona opened the door, it wasn't Mrs. Carson standing on her porch. It was Michael Jordan. "Mr. Jordan," she said, surprised. "I wasn't expecting you." He smiled. "I was in town and wanted to see how you and the boys were settling in. Is this a good time?" "Of course." She stepped aside to let him enter. "The boys are out back. They'll be thrilled to see you." Since the revelation 3 months ago, Jordan had kept in touch through his assistant, making sure the transition went smoothly. But this was his first visit to their home. "The place looks good," he said, glancing around the living room where family photos, including several of Terrell, lined the walls. "It's perfect," Ramona said sincerely. "I don't know how we can ever thank you enough." Jordan shook his head. "No thanks necessary. This was long overdue." She led him to the backyard, where the boys stopped their game mid-dribble, staring in awe. "Is that really?" Zach whispered loudly. "Boys," Ramona called, "you remember Mr. Jordan?" Marcus approached first, extending his hand the way Terrell had taught him. "Thank you for everything, sir, especially the basketball camp." "You're welcome," Jordan replied, shaking his hand firmly. "I heard you were one of the standouts this summer." Marcus beamed. "I'm trying to be." Zach hung back, suddenly shy, until Jordan knelt to his level. "How's the breathing, young man?" "Much better," Zach said. "I can play for almost an hour now without stopping." "That's great progress," Jordan said. "Keep working at it." The boys resumed their game, showing off a little for their famous visitor, while Ramona and Jordan sat on the patio. "They're good kids," Jordan observed. "Terrell would be proud." "I think so," Ramona agreed. "Every day, I see pieces of him. In them." They watched the boys play in comfortable silence for a moment. "I brought something for you," Jordan said finally, reaching into his jacket. "I wasn't sure if I should, but my wife convinced me you should have it." He handed her a small package wrapped in tissue paper. Ramona unwrapped it carefully to find a basketball. Not a full-sized one, but a miniature collectible, similar to the keychain Terrell had carried. "Turn it over," Jordan instructed. On the bottom was a hidden seam. When Ramona pressed it, the ball opened like a locket, revealing a small compartment. Inside was a yellowed newspaper clipping and a photograph. The clipping, dated July 1982, mentioned a bar incident in Durham that had been quickly contained with no arrests. No names were listed. The photograph showed a young Terrell and an equally young Michael Jordan sitting on the hood of a car, laughing together. "He kept this?" Ramona asked, stunned. Jordan nodded. "I found it when we located his personal effects from the accident. The police had cataloged everything, but this wasn't claimed." Ramona carefully removed the photo, turning it over. On the back, in Terrell's handwriting, "Remember, there's always more good than bad in the world. Just look for it." Tears filled her eyes. "This is why you put the note inside a basketball." "Seemed fitting," Jordan said quietly. "Terrell saved me that night, not just from the fight, but from becoming cynical. He was right. There is more good than bad. Sometimes we just need to be reminded." Ramona clutched the small basketball, feeling as if Terrell had sent her one last message across the years. One last reminder of who he was and what he believed. "Thank you for this," she whispered. "It means everything." Jordan stood, watching the boys play. Terrell never wanted recognition, turned down every offer of help or connection I tried to make over the years. But I always thought someday I'd have the chance to thank him properly. "Now you have," Ramona said, "through them." She followed his gaze to Marcus, who was showing Zach how to improve his shooting form. Patient, encouraging, just as Terrell would have been. "I should get going," Jordan said. "Just wanted to see how everything was working out." "Would you like to stay for lunch?" Ramona offered. "The boys would love it." He smiled. "Another time. I have a flight to catch." He handed her a card. "But call if you need. Anything. Anything at all." As she walked him to the door, Ramona felt a sense of completeness she hadn't experienced since Terrell's death. The circle that had begun with a chance encounter in a Durham bar 25 years ago had finally closed. On the front porch, Jordan paused. "One more thing. Terrell once told me that if he ever had children, he'd teach them that what matters isn't how many shots you make, but how many times you're willing to take the shot when it matters." Ramona smiled through her tears. That sounds exactly like him. After Jordan left, Ramona returned to the backyard. The boys were still playing, their laughter filling the air. She sat on the patio, opening the miniature basketball again to look at the photograph. There was her Terrell, young and vibrant, his future still ahead of him. A future that would include her, their sons, joy, and ultimately tragedy. A future where a small act of integrity would ripple forward through decades, eventually returning to bless the family he left behind. "Mom," Marcus called. "Come play with us." Ramona carefully closed the basketball, tucking it into her pocket next to Terrell's keychain. Then she joined her sons on the court, feeling Terrell's presence in every bounce of the ball, every swish of the net, every smile on her boys' faces. This was their new beginning, but it was also a continuation of the legacy Terrell had left, a legacy of kindness, integrity, and the belief that doing the right thing, even without recognition, eventually comes full circle. As she attempted a clumsy shot that somehow made it through the hoop, her sons cheered. And somewhere, Ramona was certain Terrell was cheering too. 1 year later, Ramona sat on the front porch swing, watching fireflies dance in the summer twilight. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. From inside the house came the sounds of Marcus and Zach arguing good-naturedly over a video game. Life had settled into a new normal that still sometimes felt like a dream. Zach's asthma was well controlled with his new treatments. Marcus had made the high school varsity basketball team as a freshman, the youngest player in the school's history. And Ramona had been promoted to manager at Delaney's, with weekends off and benefits that gave her family security. They hadn't known in years, all because of a basketball legend's gratitude to her husband. The miniature basketball Jordan had given her sat on the side table next to the porch swing. She picked it up, opening the hidden compartment to look at the photograph inside. Something she often did when she wanted to feel close to Terrell. A car pulled into the driveway, headlights illuminating the basketball hoop that stood silhouetted against the darkening sky. Ramona recognized Thomas Wilson as he stepped out, carrying a small package. "Good evening, Ms. Fletcher," he called, walking up the path. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," Ramona said, standing to greet him. "This is a surprise." Wilson smiled. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop this by. It's the last piece of paperwork for Zach's medical trust." He handed her the package. Michael wanted to make sure everything was in order before his foundation takes over the annual funding. "Please thank him again," Ramona said, "for everything." Wilson nodded, then glanced at the miniature basketball in her hand. "Ah, I see he gave you the keepsake." "Yes, about a year ago." Ramona gestured to the porch swing. "Would you like to sit for a moment? I could get you some iced tea." "That would be lovely, thank you." While Ramona went inside to get the drinks, Wilson settled on the swing. Through the open window, he could hear the boys laughing, the sounds of a happy home. When Ramona returned with 2 glasses of tea, Wilson accepted one gratefully. "It's good to see everything working out for your family." "Better than I ever could have imagined," Ramona agreed, sitting beside him. She hesitated, then asked the question that had lingered in her mind for months. "May I ask you something, Mr. Wilson?" "Of course." "How did you know Terrell? You seemed familiar with him when we first met, beyond just knowing the story." Wilson smiled, a hint of nostalgia in his expression. "I was there that night too, in the bar, in Durham." Ramona's eyes widened. "You were?" Wilson nodded. "I was Michael's financial advisor even then, one of his first hires when he turned professional. I was visiting him during that summer league, went out with him and his teammates that night." He took a sip of tea. "I witnessed what Terrell did, how he stepped in when things got ugly, got Michael out safely without anyone recognizing what was happening." "You saw it happen," Ramona said softly. "Yes, and I saw something else too." Wilson set his glass down. "Something that Michael doesn't know. Something I've debated telling you for over a year now." Ramona's heart quickened. "What is it?" Wilson looked at her intently. "Terrell didn't just happen to be in that bar. He was there with a purpose." "What do you mean?" Earlier that day, Michael had received threats, racial slurs, warnings to stay in his place. It wasn't unusual in those days, sadly. But these were specific, mentioning the bar where the team hung out after games. Wilson's voice lowered. The men who started the confrontation that night weren't random troublemakers. They'd planned it, a deliberate attempt to provoke Michael into a career-damaging incident. Ramona felt a chill despite the warm evening. "How do you know this?" "Because after everything calmed down, I overheard Terrell on the phone in the parking lot. He was reporting to someone that Jordan is safe and that he'd handled it without anyone knowing." "Reporting to who?" Ramona asked, confused. Wilson hesitated. "I believe Terrell was working security. Unofficial, undercover protection for Michael arranged by UNC's athletic department. They were concerned about threats against their rising star, but didn't want to alarm him with obvious bodyguards." The revelation struck Ramona with physical force. Terrell never said anything about working security. He was a student at NC Central. Yes, but he was also known in college basketball circles as someone with good judgment and impressive physical presence. The kind of person who could diffuse situations without escalating them. Wilson smiled gently. The kind of person who would protect someone without seeking credit. Ramona's mind raced. Terrell had been studying criminal justice, had talked about possibly going into law enforcement. This fit with the man she knew. But why had he kept it secret? "If this is true," she said slowly, Why wouldn't Terrell have told Michael who he really was? Why? Pretend to be just a random Good Samaritan? That's what I've wondered for years, Wilson admitted. My theory? Terrell was asked to keep his role confidential. And once he saw how deeply Michael was affected by the idea that a stranger would step up to help him, how it restored Michael's faith in humanity at a crucial time. Perhaps Terrell decided the story was more valuable than the truth. It made sense. Terrell had always believed in the power of stories to shape how people saw the world. He'd told their sons stories about perseverance, about integrity, about finding the good in difficult situations. So Michael still doesn't know? Ramona asked. Wilson shook his head. No, and I'm still not certain if he should. That's partly why I've come tonight, to ask your opinion on whether this last piece of the story should be revealed. Ramona opened the miniature basketball again, looking at the photograph of the two young men laughing together, at Terrell's handwritten message about finding the good in the world. No, she said finally. I don't think we should tell him. Wilson looked surprised. May I ask why? Because Terrell kept this secret for a reason, Ramona said with certainty. The story of a stranger stepping up, asking for nothing in return. That meant something important to Michael. It shaped him. Terrell understood that. She closed the basketball carefully. Some stories are more valuable than facts. Terrell knew that. It's why he never told me, never told our boys. The lesson was what mattered to him. Wilson nodded slowly. I believe you're right. Terrell's choice was deliberate, a final gift to Michael that went beyond the act itself. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the fireflies rise higher in the deepening darkness. Thank you for telling me, though, Ramona said finally, for helping me understand this last piece of who Terrell was. Wilson stood to leave. I thought you deserved to know the full truth about your husband, about the man who shaped not just your lives, but in some small way, the course of basketball history. After Wilson departed, Ramona remained on the porch swing, holding the miniature basketball and thinking about the man she had loved. Terrell had been even more extraordinary than she had known, not just for one spontaneous act of courage, but for the wisdom to understand how stories shape us, how sometimes the meaning we find matters more than the literal truth. Inside, she heard Marcus call, Mom, come see this move Zach just did. Ramona smiled, tucking the basketball into her pocket. Some secrets were worth keeping. Some stories were worth preserving in their most meaningful form, even if they weren't perfectly accurate. That, too, was part of Terrell's legacy. The understanding that what mattered wasn't always what happened, but what we learned from it, how we grew, how we carried those lessons forward. As she went inside to join her boys, Ramona felt a deep sense of peace. The mysterious connection between Michael Jordan and her husband wasn't so mysterious after all. It was simply the story of one good man who understood that sometimes the greatest acts of kindness come not just from what we do, but from how we allow others to understand it. And for Ramona and her sons, that understanding would be the most precious inheritance of all. And that's the story of how one act of kindness changed Ramona's life forever. Where are you listening from today? Drop your location in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, Sharing. These stories of kindness and connection helps remind us all that good things still happen in our world every day. Ready for another heartwarming story? Click on the video appearing on your screen right now. Until next time, remember that kindness always comes back around.